Good afternoon, family. How are you guys doing? Let me back this up. It's me, baby girl, Slaughter, Carolyn Denise, known as Niecy. I go by many names. Um, Sorry. I need to read something to you all, and I just want you to listen. I'm not going to be too long on here, but I feel a need to read this. I'm going to try to read it pretty quick. I just want y'all to listen, all right? Um, It's for a couple of family members who are experiencing some things. Everybody's got their own, I hate to use the word belief, but because belief infers the lack of knowledge and not knowing, lack of knowledge and knowing. I just want to read this to you, and I hope this brings you comfort and it'll pique your curiosity to where you will go and research a few things. I'm reading from the Tibetan Book of the Living and the Dying. All right. My son Alex has the same book. We just have different iterations of copies. I think he has the first edition, and I have the revised edition. I'm going to read from chapter 18. It's called The Bardo of Becoming. And I just want you to listen. All right? And it says, the experience of death for most people will simply mean passing into a state of oblivion at the end of the process of dying. The 3 stages of inner dissolution can be as quick. It is sometimes said as 3 snaps of a finger. The white and red essences of father and mother meet at the heart, and the black experience called full attainment rises. The ground luminosity dawns, but we fail to recognize it, and we faint unto unconsciousness. As I have said, this is the first failure to recognize or stage of ignorance, called the Ma Rigpa in Tibetan, the opposite of Rigpa. This marks the beginning of, in us, another cycle of samsara, which was interrupted for an instant at the moment of death. The bardo of Dhamata then occurs, and it simply flashes past unrecognized. This is a second failure of recognition, a second stage of ignorance, Ma Rigpa. The first thing that we are aware of is as if the sky and earth were separating again. We suddenly awaken into the intermediate state that lies between death and a new rebirth. This is called the Bardo of Becoming, the Sepa Bardo, and is the third Bardo of death. With our failure to recognize the ground luminosity and our failure to recognize the Bardo of Dhammata, the seeds of all our habitual tendencies are activated and reawakened. The Bardo of Becoming spans the time between the reawakening and our entering the womb of the next life. The word Sipa in Sepa Bardo, which is translated as the becoming, also means possibility or existence. In the Sipa Bardo, as the mind is no longer limited and obstructed by the physical body of this world, the possibilities are infinite for becoming reborn in different realms. And this Bardo has the outer existence of the mental body and the inner existence of the mind. The outstanding feature of the Bardo of Becoming is that mind takes on the predominant role, whereas the Bardo of Dhammata unfolded within the realms of Rigpa. So in the Bardo of Dhammata, we have a body of light, and in the Bardo of Becoming, we have a mental body. In the Bardo of Becoming, the mind is endowed with immense clarity and unlimited mobility, yet the direction in which it moves determined solely by the habitual tendencies of our past karma. So it is called karmatic Bardo of the Becoming because of the Kala Rinpoche says it is an entirely automatic or blind result of our previous actions or karma, and nothing that occurs here is a conscious decision on the part of the being. We are simply buffeted around by the force of karma. At this point, the mind has arrived at the next stage in its process of gradual unfolding, and out of its pure state, the ground luminosity, through its light and energy, the appearances of the Bardo of the Dhammata, and so into yet grosser manifestation of a mental form in the Bardo of Becoming. What takes place now at this stage is a reverse process of dissolution. The winds reappear. Along with them come the thought states connected with ignorance, desire, and anger. Then, because the memory of our past karmic body is still fresh in our mind, we take on the mental body. Our mental body in the Bardo of Becoming has a number of special characteristics. Now listen to this. It possesses all its senses. It is extremely light, lucid, mobile, and its awareness is said to be 7 times clearer than in life. It is also endowed with rudimentary kind of a clairvoyance, which is not under conscious control, but gives the mental body the ability to read others' minds. And it says, at this mental body will have a form similar to the body of the life just lived, yet it is without any defects and is in the prime of life. Even if you were handicapped or sick in this life, you will have a perfect mental body in the Bardo of the Becoming. One of the ancient teachings of the Dzogchen tells us that the mental body is about the size of a child of 8 to 10 years old. Because of the force of the conceptual thinking, also known as the karmic wind, the mental body is unable to remain still even for an instant. It is ceaselessly on the move. It can go wherever it wishes unobstructedly, just by thinking. Because the mental body has no physical basis, it can pass through solid barriers such as walls or mountains. The mental body can see through 3-dimensional objects. Yet since we lack the father and mother essences of the physical body, we no longer have the light of the sun and the moon, but only a dim glow illuminating the space immediately in front of us. We see other Bardo beings, but let me say that one more time, all right? Y'all need to hear me. Okay? So we can meet and converse with fleeting moments with many other travelers in the Bardo world, those who have died before us. We can see other Bardo beings, but we cannot be seen by living beings, except those who have the kind of clairvoyance developed through deep experience of meditation. So we can meet and converse with fleeting moments with many other travelers in the Bardo world, those who have died before us. Because of the presence of the 5 elements in this makeup, the mental body seems to be used as a solid, seems to us to be solid, and we still feel pangs of hunger. The Bardo teachings say that the mental body lives off odors and derives nourishment from burnt offerings, like incense. Okay. Sage, white sage. But it can only benefit from offerings dedicated specifically in its name. In this state, mental activity is very rapid. Thoughts come in quick succession, and we can do many things all at once. The mind continues to perpetuate the set patterns and habits, especially its clinging to experiences and its beliefs that they are ultimately real. Okay? And I want to read this part to you. Okay, we're looking okay on time. The experiences of the Bardo. During the first weeks of the Bardo, we have the impression that we are a man or woman, just as in our previous life. We do not realize that we are dead. We do not realize that we're dead. Okay? We return home to meet our family and our loved ones. We try to talk to them, to touch them on the shoulder, but they do not reply or even show that they are aware we are there. As hard as we try, nothing can make them notice us. We watch powerlessly as they weep or they sit stunned and heartbroken over our death. So they're witnessing. Your loved one is witnessing everything that you're seeing. They're watching you and they're experiencing this with you. And I'm just saying, this is known around different texts. I'm just reading one text, okay? So it says, we try to talk to them, to touch them on the shoulder, but they do not reply or even show that they are aware we are there. As hard as we try, nothing can make them notice us. We watch powerlessly that they weep and sit stunned and heartbroken over death. Fruitlessly, we try to make us make use of our belongings. Like, our place is no longer laid at the table. The arrangements are being made to dispose of our possessions. We feel angry. We feel hurt. We feel frustrated like a fish, says the Tibetan Book of the Dead, writhing in hot sand. If we are attached to our body, we may even try in vain to re-enter or hover around it. Okay? In extreme cases, the mental body can linger near its possessions or body for weeks or even years after the passing or the transition. And still, it may not dawn on us we are dead. It is only when we see that we cast no shadow, make no reflection in the mirror, no footprints on the ground, that we finally realize. And the sheer shock of recognizing we have died can be enough to make us faint away. In the Bardo of Becoming, we relive all the experiences of our past life, reviewing minute details long lost to memory, and revisiting places, the masters say, where we did no more than spit on the ground. Every 7 days, we are compelled to go through the experience of death once again, with all its suffering. If our death was peaceful, that peaceful state of mind is repeated. If it was tormented, however, that torment is repeated too. And remember that this is with a consciousness 7 times since more intense than that of life. And that in that fleeting period of the Bardo of Becoming, all the negative karma of previous lives is returning in a fiercely concentrated and deranging way. And this is what happens during the transition, all right? Our restlessness, solitary, wandering through the Bardo wood is a frantic and nightmare. And just as in a dream, we believe we have a physical body, that we really exist. Yet all the experience of this Bardo arise only from our mind, created by our karma and our habits, and it's returning. The winds of the elements return, as the Tolkien Eugenie Rupping says. One hears loud sounds caused by the 4 elements of air, water, fire, wind. There is earth, water, fire, and wind. There is a sound of an avalanche constantly falling behind one, the sound of a great rushing river, the sound of a huge blazing mass of fire like a volcano, and the sound of a great storm. Trying to escape them in the terrifying darkness is, as it says, that 3 different abysses, white, red, and black, deep and dreadful, upon us, in front of us. These, the Tibetan Book of the Dead tell us, are our own anger, our desire, and our ignorance. We are assailed by freezing downpours, hailstorms of pus and blood, haunted by the sound of disembodied, menacing cries, hounded by the flesh-eating demons and carnivore beasts. We are swept along relentlessly by the wind of karma, unable to hold on to any ground. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says, at this time, the great tornado of karma, terrifying, unbearable, whirling fiercely, will drive you from behind. Consumed by fear, blown to and from like a dandelion seeds in the wind, we roam helplessly through the gloom of the Bardo. Tormented by hunger and thirst, we seek refuge here and there. Our mind's perceptions change every moment, projecting us like out of a catapult, says the Tibetan Book of the Dead, into alternate states of sorrow or joy. Into our mind comes a longing for a physical body, and yet we fail to find one, which plunges us further into suffering. The whole landscape and environment is molded by our karma, just as the Bardo world can be peopled by the nightmarish images of our own delusions. If our habitual conduct in life was positive, our perception and experience in the Bardo will be mixed with bliss, happiness. And if our lives were harmful or hurtful to others, our experiences in the Bardo will be one of pain, grief, and fear. So, it was said in the Tibet, fishermen, butchers, and hunters are attacked by monstrous versions of their former victims. Some who have studied the near-death experiences in detail, also especially the Life Review, yeah, I remember that. That is one of its common features. have asked themselves, how could we possibly imagine the horror of the Bardo experiences of a drug baron, dictator, or a Nazi torturer? The Life Review seems to suggest that after death, we can experience all the suffering for which we were both directly and indirectly responsible. The duration of the Bardo of the Becoming. The whole of the Bardo of Becoming has an average duration of 49 days and a minimum length of 1 week. But it varies. Just as now, some people live to be 100 years old and others die in their youth. Some can even get stuck in the Bardo to become spirits or ghosts. The Dejun Rapanish used to explain that during the first 21 days of the Bardo, you still have some strong impression of your previous life. And this is therefore the most important period for living to be able to help a dead person. I'm going to repeat that one more time, and I have a marker. I'm going to read this again. They say, during the first 21 days of the Bardo, you still have a strong impression of your previous life, and therefore is the most important period for the living to be able to help a dead person. After that, your future life slowly takes shape and becomes the dominant influence. We have to wait in the Bardo until we can make a karmic connection with future parents. All right? We have to wait in the Bardo until we make a karmic connection with our future parents. I sometimes think of the Bardo as something like a transit lounge, in which you can wait for up to 49 days before transferring to the next life. But there are two special cases who don't have to wait in the intermediate state because the intensity of the power of their karma sweeps them immediately on to their next rebirth. The first are those who have lived extremely beneficial and positive lives, and so train their minds in spiritual practice that force of the realization carries them directly into a good rebirth. The second case are those lives have been negative and harmful. They can travel swiftly down to their next birth, wherever that might be. Judgment. Some accounts of the Bardo describe a judgment scene, a kind of life review similar to the post-mortem judgment found in many of the world's cultures. Your good conscience, a white guardian angel, acts as your defense counselor, recounting the beneficial things you have done, while your bad conscience, a black demon, submits the case for the prosecution. Good and bad are totaled up as the white and black pebbles. The Lord of Death, who presides then, consults the mirror of karma and makes his judgment. I feel that in this judgment scene, there are some interesting parallels with the life review of the near-death experience. Ultimately, all judgment takes place within our own mind. We are the judge and the judged. It is interesting to note, says Raymond Moody, that the judgment in the cases I've studied came from the being of the light, who seemed to love and accept these people anyway, but rather from within the individual being judged. A woman went through a near-death experience told me, you are shown your life and you do the judging. You are judging yourself. You have been forgiven for all of your sins, but you are able to forgive yourself for not doing the things you should have done and some little cheating things that maybe you've done in life. Can you forgive yourself? This is the judgment. The judgment scene also shows that the judgment scene also shows that what really counts in the final analysis is the motivation behind your every action, and that there is no escaping the effects of our past actions, words, thoughts, and the imprints that habit have stamped upon us. It means that we are entirely responsible not only for the life, but for our own future lives as well. All right? The power of the mind. As our mind is so light, mobile, and vulnerable in the Bardo, whatever thoughts arise, good or bad, have tremendous power and influence. Without a physical body to ground us, thoughts actually become reality. Imagine the sharp grief and anger we might feel on seeing a funeral service performed carelessly on our behalf, or greedy relatives squabbling over our possessions, or friends we loved deeply and thought had loved us, talking about us in a sneering or hurtful or simply condescending way. Such a situation could be very dangerous because our reaction in its violence could drive us directly towards an unfortunate rebirth. The overwhelming power of thoughts then is the key issue in the Bardo of Becoming. All right? You got to keep that in mind. This crucial moment finds us completely exposed to whatever habits and tendencies we had allowed to grow and dominate our lives. If you don't check those habits and tendencies now in life and prevent them from seizing hold of your mind, then in the Bardo of Becoming, you will be helpless victim, buffeted to and fro by their power. The slightest irritation, for example, in the Bardo of Becoming can become a devastating effect, and that is why traditionally the person reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead had to be someone with whom you had a good connection. If not, the very sound of his or her voice could infuriate you with the most disastrous consequences. The teachings give us many descriptions of the rawness of the mind in the Bardo of the Becoming. The most striking of these says that our mind in this Bardo is like a flaming red-hot iron bar that can be bent in wherever way you want until it cools off. When whatever form it finds itself in rapidly solidifies, in just the same way, it is said a single positive thought in the Bardo can lead directly to enlightenment, and a single negative reaction can plunge you into the most prolonged and suffering. The Tibetan Book of the Dead could not warn us more strongly. And it says, now is the time in which the borderline between going up and going down. Now is the time when we be slipping into laziness, even for a moment. You will endure constant suffering. Now is the time when, by concentrating for the instant, you will enjoy constant happiness. Focus your mind singly-mindedly. Strive to prolong the results of good karma. The Tibetan Book of the Dead tries to awaken any connection with the spiritual practice the dead person may have had, and it encourages us to give up attachment to people and possessions, to abandon yearning for a body, not to give in to the desire or anger, to cultivate kindness rather than hostility, and not even to contemplate negative actions. It reminds the dead person there is no need to fear. On the one hand, it tells them that terrifying Bardo figures are nothing more than their own deluded projections and by nature empty. And on the other hand, that they themselves have only a mental body and habitual tendencies and are therefore empty. So emptiness cannot harm emptiness. The shifting and precarious nature of the Bardo of Becoming can also be the source of many opportunities for liberation, and the accessibility of mind in the Bardo can be turned into an advantage. All we have to do is remember one instruction. All it needs is for one positive thought to spring into our mind. If we can recall any teaching that has inspired us to the nature of mind, if we have even one good inclination toward practice or a deep connection with the spiritual practice, then that alone can free us. In the Bardo of Becoming, the Buddha realms do not appear spontaneously as they do in the Bardo of Dhammata. Just by remembering them, however, you can transfer yourself there directly by the power of your mind and proceed toward enlightenment. It is said that if you can invoke a Buddha, he will immediately appear before you. But remember, even though the possibilities are limitless, we must have at least some, if not total, control over our mind in this Bardo. And this is extremely difficult because the mind here is so vulnerable and fragmented and restless. So in this Bardo, whenever you can suddenly retrieve your awareness, even for a moment, immediately recall your connection with the spiritual practice, remember your master or Buddha, and invoke them with all your strength. If in your life you have developed the natural effects of praying whenever things become difficult or crucial or slip beyond your control, then instantly you will be able to invoke or to call to mind an enlightened being such as Buddha or Tara or Vanashkenevar or Christ or the Virgin Mary, if you are able to invoke them verbally with one pointed devotion and with all your heart, even through the power of their blessing, your mind will be liberated into the space of their wisdom. Prayer in this life may seem sometimes to bring such result, but its efforts in the Bardo are unprecedentedly powerful. Yet the description I have given you of the Bardo shows the sheer difficulty of focusing the mind at this juncture. If we have had no previous training, think how almost impossible it is to remember something like a prayer in a dream or a nightmare. How impotent and powerless we feel in them. In the Bardo of Becoming, it is just as hard, if not harder, to collect our thoughts. This is why the watchword of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, repeated over and over again, do not be distracted, as it points out. This is the dividing line where Buddhas and sentient beings are separated. In an instant, they are separated. In an instant, complete enlightenment. Let's talk about the rebirth. As in the Bardo of Becoming, the time for rebirth gets closer. You crave more and more of the support of your material body, and you search for one that might be available to which to be reborn. Different signs begin to appear, warning you of the realm in which you are likely to take rebirth. Lights of various colors shine from the 6 realms of existence, and you will feel drawn toward one or another, depending on the negative emotion that is predominant in your mind. Once you have been drawn into one of these lights, it is very difficult to turn back. The images and visions will arise, linked to the different realms. As you become more familiar with the teachings, you will become more alert to what they really mean. The signs vary slightly according to the different teachings. Some say that if you are to be reborn as a god, you will have a vision of entering a heavenly palace with many mansions or stories. If you are to be reborn as a demigod, you will feel you are amidst a spinning circle for weapons of fire or going into a battlefield. If you are to be reborn as an animal, you find yourself in a cave, a hole in the ground, or a nest made of straw. If you have a vision of a tree stump, a deep forest, or a woven cloth, you are to be reborn as a hungry ghost. And if you are to be reborn in hell, you will feel you are being led powerless into a black pit, down a black road, and into a somber land with black or red houses, or toward a city of iron. There are many other signs, such as the way to which you gaze or movement is aligned, which indicate the realm for which you are heading. If you are to be reborn in a god or human realm, your gaze will be directly upward. If in an animal realm, you will look straight ahead, as do birds. If in a hungry ghost or hell realm, you will be facing downward, as though you were diving. If any of these signs appear, you should be on guard not to fall into any of these unfortunate rebirths. At the same time, you will have to intense desire and longing for certain realms, and you are drawn toward all too instinctively. The teachings warn us that in the point there is a great danger that out of your avid eagerness to be reborn, you will rush into any place at all that seems to offer some security. If your desire is frustrated, the anger that arises will of itself bring the Bardo abruptly to an end, as you are swept into the next rebirth by the current of the negative emotions. And so you can see your future rebirth is directly determined by desire, anger, and ignorance. And it says, imagine that you run toward a place of refuge simply to escape the onset of the Bardo experience. Then, terrified to leave, you might become attached and take on a new birth, no matter where, just in order to have one. You might even, the Tibetan Book of the Dead explains, because confused and mistaken is a good birthplace for a bad one, or a bad one for a good one, or hear voices of your loved ones calling you, or seductive singing and following these, only to find yourself being lured down into the lower realms. All right? You must take great care not to enter blindly into one of those desirable realms. Yet, what is wonderful is that the instant you become aware of what is happening to you, you can actually begin to influence and change your destiny. Swept along by the wind of karma, you will then arrive at a place where your future parents are making love. Yeah. And I know this is going to sound a little off. Some people may think it's off, but I have seen that and I remember that. I remember it. Seeing them, you become emotionally drawn in, and because of past karmic connections, you begin spontaneously to feel strong attachment or aversion. Attraction and desire for the mother and aversion or jealousy for the father result in your being born as a male child, and the reverse, a female. But if you succumb to such strong passions, not only will you be reborn, but that very emotion may draw you into birth in a lower realm. You have to be careful. I know this sounds foreign. I'm sharing this information with you for a purpose. I'm going to read that one more time. It says, attraction and desire for the mother and the aversion or jealousy for the father will result in you being born as a male child and the reverse, a female. But if you succumb to such a strong passions, not only will you be reborn, but that very emotion may draw you into birth in the lower realm. Is there anything now that we can do to avoid being reborn or direct our next rebirth? The Bardo teachings give two specific kinds of instructions: methods for preventing a rebirth or failing that for choosing a good birth. First are the guidelines for closing the entrance to another birth. The best method is to abandon emotions such as desire, anger, jealousy, and recognize that none of these Bardo experiences have any ultimate reality. If you can realize this and then rest the mind in its true, empty nature, this in itself will prevent rebirth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead here warns us. Alas, the father and mother, the great storm, the whirlwind, the thunder, the terrifying projections, and all those apparent phenomena are illusionary in this real nature. However, they appear that are not real. They're not real. All substances are false and untrue. They are like a mirage. They are not permanent. They are not changeless. What is the use of desire? What is the use of fear? It is regarding the non-existence of the existent. The Tibetan Book of the Dead goes on to advise us that all substances are my own mind, and this mind is emptiness, unrisen, and unobstructed. Thinking this, keep your mind natural and undiluted, self-contained in its own nature, like water poured into a water. Just as it is loose, open, and relaxed, by letting it rest naturally and loosely, you can be sure that the womb entrance to all different kinds of birth will certainly be closed. The next best method to present rebirth is to see your potential parents as the Buddha or your master or Yadam deity. And at the very least, you should try to generate a feeling of renunciation against being drawn into feelings of desire and to think of the pure realms of the Buddha. This will prevent rebirth and may cause you to be reborn in one of the Buddha realms. If you're unable to stabilize the mind enough to do even this kind of practice, then there remains a method of choosing a rebirth, which are linked to the landmarks and signs of different realms. If you must take a rebirth or intentionally wish to be reborn in order to pursue your spiritual path and be of benefit to others, you should not enter any but the human realm. And this is what I did. I know how that sounds, but I remember. It is only there that conditions are favorable for spiritual progress. If you are going to be born into a fortunate situation in the human realm, the teachings tell us you will feel you are arriving at a spontaneous or beautiful house, a scrumptious or beautiful house, or in a city among a crowd of people, or you will have a vision of couples making love. Otherwise, generally, we have no choice. We are drawn toward our birthplace as inexorably as a bird lured into a cage, dry grass catching fire, or an animal sinking into the marsh. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says, O son or daughter of an enlightened family, even though you do not want to go, you have no power of your own. You are helpless and compelled to go. Yet, as the teachings are always so inspiringly reminding us, there is always hope. Now is the time for prayer. By wishing and concentrating intensely, even at this moment, you can still be reborn in one of the Buddha realms, or else you can generate a deep aspiration to be reborn as a human family, where you may be able to meet the spiritual path and continue toward liberation. If you have strong karma that impels you toward a particular realm, you may have no choice. However, your past aspiration and prayers can help you to reshape your destiny, so you may be reborn into a life that will lead one day to liberation. Even as you enter the womb, you can go on praying for this to happen. Even now, you can visualize yourself as an enlightened being. Traditionally, the masters bless the womb you are entering as a sacred environment, a palace of the gods, and continue to practice. Now, when the Bardo of Becoming dawns upon me, I will concentrate my mind one pointedly and strive to prolong the results of good karma. Close the entrance to rebirth and try to keep from being reborn. This is a time when perseverance and pure perception are needed. Abandon negative emotions and meditate on the master. Ultimately, it is the mind's urge to inhabit a particular realm that impels us toward reincarnation, and its tendency to solidify and to grasp that finds its ultimate expression in physical rebirth. This is the last part. This is the next stage in the process of manifestation that we have seen taking place throughout the Bardos. If you succeed in directing the mind toward a human birth, you have come full circle. You are poised to be born again into a natural bardo of this life. When you see your father and mother in intercourse, your mind is ineluctably drawn in and enters the womb. The signals the end of the Bardo of Becoming. As your mind rapidly re-experiences yet again the signs of the phases of the dissolution and the dawning of the ground luminosity, then the black experience of the full attainment arises again. And at the same moment, for the connection to the new womb is made. So life begins as it ends with the ground luminosity. I know this was a lengthy chapter, but I just wanted to read that. And it's the Bardo of Becoming. It's chapter 18. Chapter 19 talks about helping in death. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to read that because it's very important for us to cover this. Helping the bereaved, going through this process, a heart practice, ending grief and learning through grief. It's going to be a lengthy chapter, but I feel that it is necessary for me to read that because I feel like this will help. It will help many people who are grieving and who are suffering right now. And I mean, everyone has their own quote unquote belief based on what you were taught as your indoctrination, what you've come to understand in these bodies, and what you've come to understand as a sentient being, right? Because we're all sentient beings. And the majority of us are. Anyway, I'm reading from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I just wanted to read chapter 18 to you. When I come back, I'm going to read again. I'm going to read the next chapter, which is chapter 19. And I think this is the one that it's really going to be beneficial. It's called Helping After Death. All right. I hope you guys have an amazing day. And remember what I always say, be the change you want to see all around this earth dome, because it is up to you and I to make that positive change.